Hey, Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll get started in just a moment.
Thank you, Daniel.
Tell me when you're ready, Daniel. Okay. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. If everyone would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
of the United States of America,
to the republic
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, council has had time to review the agenda. Is there a motion that we approve or are there changes?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
All those in favor? All right, your agenda is approved. Are there any announcements this evening?
Excuse me, Shay, who seconded that motion?
Randy.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Our staff from behind the curtain. Okay.
No,
All right, no announcements.
No announcements.
No announcements. Okay. Is there any public comment this evening? No? Ms. Wilson?
You want me to say my name again? Okay, Toinette Wilson. I live on Banner Farm Road. I know I only get 3 minutes, so I'm going to go really quick, but I want to say before I get started that these are my opinions and that there's nothing personal going on in this room from me, just my own observance. Today I had some ups and downs, and I decided I was going to come up here and talk to you all. In the meantime, somebody called me and told me about the article that was in the Citizen Times or whatever on the Mills River, the venue thing, which I found that to be a very good article. And I found that the people that they interviewed really made some good points, and I hope y'all had a time to read that and observe it. Now, this is what I've written here. No doubt, most of you all know that I have been complaining about trying to get a noise pollution ordinance for over 3 years. And I believe first it was Sierra Nevada came to Mills River. And there are residents that live up that way that do complain about the music that comes from there. Then Bold Rock. Bold Rock decided to open up, not sure if it's considered a distillery or brewery or whatever, but they decided to move to Apple Country to be closer so they can make their cider. No problem. They decided to open up a tasting room. See that? But then it wasn't enough. They decided they had to compete with Sierra Nevada. So they had to grow their brand. And that's when all the food truck, the outdoor music came to light. And then we got Mills River Brewery. Well, of course, they're into live music now too. Question, they've got an outdoor stage. Did they get a building permit for that? Does anybody know? Guess not. Okay. So then, you know, I've got it coming from the back of my house. I got it coming from, depending on which way, if I'm sitting on the back porch, I've got it coming from the left side of my house. And then we got the venue down the road that Dr. Van Ostendorf decided he wanted to have a wedding venue and other venues there too. And he's probably the only man that I've ever heard of that said that they loved weddings. But anyway, and I forgot my other key word that I wanted to say, that these hills are alive with the sound of music. I wanted to say that too. Now, when I apologized earlier, it was probably also going to the sheriff's department. On September 30th, 2017, I called the sheriff's department. When Officer Ramsey showed up, I was belittled by him. And he stated he took him 30 to 60 minutes to get to my house. And he stated he had been going to neighbors, asking them if they had a disturbance. And that was all a lie, but he belittled me. And I was still upset about that today. But I do have my my police report, and he found it unfounded. Now, Roger Snyder was there, and he knows that that sound was not unfounded. What I'm asking you all to do is to seriously take getting a noise ordinance as soon as possible. Now, I know last meeting, you all decided that you were going to send it down to planning and zoning. Well, planning and zoning meets first Tuesday of every month. Guess what the first Tuesday of this month was? It was election day. So they're not even meeting this month at all. So there goes a whole nother month. Now I've been waiting over 3 years. And here's another month just gone down, and I'm sure December is probably not going to be much better. So basically what I'm saying is please get a noise pollution ordinance for myself, which I am just at the tip of just breaking down from this. Now you say, I could move. I could move, but I tell you, I don't move because I like my location, and I have things there that my husband planted, grapes and blackberries and apple trees and a beautiful raised bed that he made with his own hands. And I don't want to leave. So I'm just asking, please give me some peace. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Is that I want Miss Wilson to stay up there, is that if you don't mind?
That's fine.
And so since you brought this up, is that I know that I've told y'all this, but just for the record, is that Mr. Wilson, sorry to hear about Dennis, is that he did call me, it's what, about 10 o'clock one night, give or take. Well, the sheriff's department couldn't even find the house or wouldn't come out, whatever. Well, so whenever I got there, Bold Rock's music was just sitting there going boom, ba boom, ba boom. And I was standing in their yard. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, then I called the sheriff's department. Well, in probably 4 or 5 minutes, give or take, the sheriff's department showed up. Is that fair?
No, it was longer than that, but go
Okay,
ahead.
all right.
I mean, you
Well-
walked all around my yard. You went from, from one end to the other. It was more than
Right.
4 or 5 minutes or whatever.
So is that, I can understand Miss Wilson's frustrations. Is that if it was a minor noise, something like that, yes. But is that whenever I was standing in their backyard and that music was so loud and I can't hear, it was hurting my ears. So I can understand what you're saying, and I'm glad that you come tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to stay to hear the Henderson County.
Sure.
report.
Sue, was there any public comment through email?
There was
Daniel?
not.
Nothing else? Okay. Okay, to the consent agenda. Is there a motion we accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
And this is Brian. I'll second.
Hold on, oh, time out. Please.
Okay.
Is that on the minutes? I'd like to make some corrections at the last meeting.
Okay,
I'm going to read this and then I'll give my copy to Sue, which Sue drafted for me. Is that I would like to make a motion that we allow in-person public comment safely, still adhering to the room rules, the distancing and so forth. Also, that it carry onward not only to each council meeting, whether it be a regular scheduled council meeting, workshop, or whatever, but it also pertain to any board or committee that is created or sanctioned by the town. That's just a correction,
Okay.
please.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda with Roger's amendment to the minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Already did. Seconded. All those in favor? Okay, to the regular agenda, we have Mr. Carl Shaw with us by Zoom tonight for the fiscal year 2019-2020 audit report presentation. Mr. Shaw?
Hi, how are you doing, Shay?
Great,
And
good to see you tiny on the screen there.
tiny on the screen.
There you are.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity of serving the town this year as your auditor. And we have completed the audit as of June 30, 2020. It's been an eventful year. And there have been changes in the flow of income that I didn't anticipate. I really thought that we would be showing much smaller amounts of sales tax revenue than what ended up. By the end of the fourth quarter, sales tax revenue were much higher than what was anticipated. So the result of that was, while we plan to use some fund balance this year by paying off the USDA loan, by setting up a capital project fund to do the ball field, the dip in fund balance was not near as significant as what it would have been had the sales tax revenue come in what we thought back in February or March. You have copies of the audit report there, I believe I'm seeing. I would like you, if you could, open them up to the regular number 5, not the Roman numerals, but back to number 5. And on that, you will find the balance sheets of the town of Mills River as of June 30. That page is also known as Exhibit 3, but it shows where you were as of June 30. Your cash position, as you see, is $4.5 million. This particular schedule also shows that the due from other governments represents the sales tax revenue that was due to you, sales tax and utility tax, and that was more than $250,000. One thing that's new this year, if you were to look at last year's statement versus this, you would find 2 columns here on this, both the general fund, which is your operating fund, and the capital project fund, which was created by your ordinance to handle the cost of the ball field. This particular schedule also shows a very strong unassigned fund balance. That represents funds that have accumulated over time. Now, I would like you to turn to page number 9, if you would. This is the budget versus actual report. And you'll notice that the net change in fund balance down at the bottom of the report shows that you've dipped into your reserves to the tune of $600,000, most of which was the $465,000 that you moved into the capital project fund for the ball field. And just above that, the debt service number. Usually you don't pay off a $500,000 debt as you did this year. I like that the town has liquidated its long-term debt, considering especially that the interest earned on CDs right now is approaching 0. The fact that you have liquidated not only the principal, but the interest that would have been paid over the next 7, 8, 10 years, that would add up to an appreciable amount of money. The overall format of the financial statements is consistent with what we have seen in the past. There were no significant changes in additional schedules that had to be presented. We do disclose some specifics about the capital project fund, which are required under the standards. We did not have to add any significant pages to the notes due to changes in governmental accounting standards. I am grateful for that. I think the reports, it's 50 pages long. So all very important information. If you go to the very last, almost to the very last schedule on page number 35, that shows the overall schedule of property taxes receivable. You know, over the years, well, look at the amount of the additions column for 2019, 2020. That represents the net levy for last year. And the amount uncollected was about $26,000. So RLE, thank you for your collections. There's a lot of work that went into making sure those monies come in. And if we look at the very last page, you'll see an overall collection rate of approaching 100%. There's not much more you can do. I do appreciate the opportunity of working with your team. Both Daniel and Sue have been very helpful to me, along with Patty and RLE and everyone else. And I'm going to forget a name, and I apologize for that. But in spite of the challenges provided by COVID-19, we came up with an approach that I believe was, it worked well for us. And I thank you for the opportunity of serving you. Do you have any questions for me?
Roger, nothing. Randy, Brian, or Brian? No questions, Mr. Shaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish you well
Thanks,
and a
Carl.
happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Take care.
Mhm.
Okay, next on the regular agenda, we have our quarterly update from the Henderson County Sheriff's Department. With us, we have Captain Andrew Starling.
Council members, thanks for having us. Since the last time we got up here to speak, we've had a lot going on at the Sheriff's Office. Before I get started in the numbers for the year, I just want to say thank you to each person that reached out through the loss of Ryan Hendricks, and also for your support for Little Jacks, for the fundraisers and stuff. Several people have reached out, and we appreciate that. It means a lot to us. Moving on with the numbers for this year. This year we're slightly up on calls for service in Mills River. We're up 6.6% this year. So far this year, we've had 8,374 calls for service here in Mills River. A lot of those are security patrols where our deputies are going out checking businesses, residents, housing developments. They're just trying to keep an eye on different crimes that are happening. 461 traffic stops so far this year. Out of the 461 traffic stops, they've resulted in 63 arrests and 132 citations being issued from those traffic stops. Suspicious motor vehicles, we've had 253 of those calls. A lot of those are on South Mills River Road, North Mills. This year, a lot of calls concerned about the suspicious activity. This year, our animal enforcement calls are down compared to what they were last year. Last year at this time, we had 406 calls. This year, we're down to 264. So a lot of the animal enforcement calls were down. As you can imagine, this year with the COVID crisis going on, people being stuck at home, our domestic calls have went up this year. We've had 104 domestic calls so far this year. B&Es, larcenies, we're at 68 right now for the year. Last year, we talked a little bit about part one crimes, which are the larceny of motor vehicles, larceny from motor vehicles, arson, murder, robbery, things of that nature. We are down this year. Last year we were at 118. This year we're at 59. So for the violent crimes that we have, and the crimes are pretty significant, those are down this year, which is pretty significant. And that's pretty much it. I mean, just their numbers are fluctuating. We'll see what these last 2 months hold, but overall, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Question I've got a couple of times
Yes, sir.
is that when is Jim coming back?
Hopefully soon. Saturday will be the funeral for his mother, and then hopefully we can get him back pretty soon. So just be keeping him in your prayers. You know, the family's going through a lot of stuff, but yeah, they made some changes, but so hopefully we'll have him back soon. I know we've been getting the same calls. When's Jim coming back? So.
All right, council have other questions for Captain Starling? Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all. Have a good evening.
Okay, now to item C, our baseball field discussion, as we are complete. Daniel yet? Nicole? We're still
Very close.
very close. Okay.
Yep.
So Nicole's going to talk to us about the Parks and Rec Committee's recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes. Parks Committee met, it wasn't last month, but the month before, to discuss any baseball specific rules that we wanted to apply to our fields. I included those in your packet. There's, I believe, 18 different rules. Most of these rules are already covered under our regular park ordinance, but we also wanted to make sure for baseball reasons that they were also highlighted, things like no tobacco, no glass containers, those sort of things. The ones that are new or kind of really baseball specific, you go through number 3, the primary use of the field is intended for baseball, softball, or kickball. All other uses must be approved by the Parks and Recreation Department. That's just to say, we don't want really high traffic sports out there that could damage the field, but we do realize there's potential other legitimate uses for a field. So we leave that open to let the Parks Department staff determine what those uses might be. Of course, no trash and littering is already covered in our rules. They wanted to specify that, not that we would ban sunflower seeds or bubble gum, but they do want to bring special attention to them because they are known issues at baseball fields for causing excessive trash that's hard to clean up. So that way, hopefully people pay just a little more mind if they're using those things. Hopefully it won't come to having to ban them, but they just wanted people to be aware that they're a problem. That we won't allow metal spikes on the baseball field. And there's actually a little typo in yours. I've already fixed it on the real notes. Metal spikes are not permitted, although non-metal cleats are encouraged for organized practice and play. Metal spikes can just really tear up your grass. So we just want to make sure they're not going to do excessive damage. We also have pets are prohibited inside the fence, whether on a leash or off. Just knowing from experience, people will like to use that as a dog park, and we want to make sure they don't, so we can keep it nice for athletic use. And then this is a biggie: no soft tossing or hitting the ball on the fence, and that is just sheerly to prevent damage. And then lastly, I think everything else in there is what we've already had in our field use policies and in our town ordinance. The only thing we wanted to add is that parking is at your own risk, because there's always potential with baseball for foul ball damage, and we just want people to know that. So with that, if you guys have any questions.
Nicole, I've got one kind of silly question. Did the Parks Committee consider banning pepper games?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Did the Parks Committee consider banning pepper games? Pepper? It's when
Pepper?
yeah. It's when you have a
No,
group
that
of
was not
fielders.
discussed.
Yeah. It's dangerous. You have a group of fielders standing close and a batter hitting ground balls to them quickly, one after the other, and it's a good way for a ball to pop
Yes,
up and
it
hurt
is.
somebody. So that's what you see when you go to a lot of ballparks and you see a sign that says no pepper. That's what they're referring to. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad one.
It's Brian Kimball. I got a question for you, Nicole. On number 14, under you got Town of Mills River Parks and Recreation Department and town partners.
Yes.
What is the definition of a town partner?
That is, I believe, up to you guys. So like for our current example, we partner with Henderson County Soccer to use our fields out here. And that is something that's, been an agreement before I was ever here, where they can use our field and they have priority for practices for soccer. So anyone we deem a partner would essentially have a given priority over other groups. And so that would be completely up to the town council on who is considered a partner.
So do partners typically have a separate contract from what would be outlined in a?
Yes.
Okay.
So they have a MOU typically that kind of outlines what that partnership is.
Are we going to post, will there be a place where we can post the schedule of the ball field down at the ball field? So that if somebody walks up and wants to hit ball with their son and in 30 minutes, there's going to be a practice or something like that, that they would know that?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly look at adding a kiosk or something. There's not currently anything in the plans, but that's certainly something we can look into, is doing a kiosk.
Even a dry
There.
erase board.
And I had plans and intentions to, like, our picnic shelter, be able to have it available online that they can see when it's reserved and when it's not.
As far as the bleachers and stuff that are down there, do we anticipate that that's enough for what we need? Or, if you have a ball game out there, I think we have one row of bleachers or one section right now. Is that correct?
We purposely in design left room that's not bleachers, because parents, the trend is not to sit in bleachers, that they bring their own kind of camp chair and want to be able to spread out and not sit on the hard bleachers. I do think, I know it looks funny because there's, you have all that space and there's just one little set of bleachers. I think as the use comes, we can look at that if people are complaining that there's not enough places to sit. But trends, any baseball parent usually carries a couple of chairs in their car, and they want a space to be able to sit and watch in their camp chairs rather than bleachers.
Is there any provisions that prevents anybody from putting up like tents or pop-up tents if they're having like let's say there's a ball tournament out there, that prevents that from occurring?
Our ordinance already requires that you get the Parks Department's permission to do that. So that's for anywhere in the park. If anybody wants to do like a pop-up 10 by 10, they just need permission. And that's mostly so we can make sure they know, like, Mills River Park's a very windy place, and some people just pop up a 10 by 10 and, without knowing that, hey, listen, you can do it, but you need to stake it down, you need sandbags, these sort of provisions. But that goes for anywhere in the park, not just the ball field.
So if I'm just going to play a scenario. If it's a Saturday and there's a tournament out here, obviously you wouldn't be here, I wouldn't think. So can the park ranger give that permission, or is that something that has to go through you?
The way it currently stands is it comes through me.
Okay.
It's part of the reservation process. She would have that discussion with.
What I'm worried about is if parents, if you go to like a softball tournament, it's not uncommon for parents to bring these tents with them. Right. Yeah. So that's my thing, is that, on a Saturday, are you going to have, who is the ranger going to be out there telling 50 parents, no, you can't have a tent, and then everybody's going to be frustrated with him, but then there's no resolution to the process?
Yeah, ideally, as Daniel said, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
You're Shay.
I was saying if it was a tournament, that would be reserved, and you would have covered that in the reservation.
Correct. And, in this situation, I wouldn't talk to every parent, but I would make sure with the tournament organizer that they knew if they had tents, if that's something they wanted to do, we would make sure they knew the rules of if you bring a tent, you need to have stakes that go with it. And then that's where our park ranger would step in. If it's a windy day and they don't have stake tents, they would have to take it down for safety reasons.
Okay. And I think I read in the rules that if you reserve the park and let's say there's inclement weather or something like that, and they have to cancel that, we do not reimburse those fees, correct?
That is correct. We've always gone the policy that we will reschedule but not reimburse.
Okay. At what point do you determine, you're in charge of determining that the field's playable or not, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And do we think of, so you brought up the foul ball situation. Do we have any consideration to put any signs up around the, if somebody comes to walk and they park the car in the parking lot and they're not thinking, and, 30 minutes later they come back, yes, and they've got a ball in their windshield.
Yes,
Do
it
we
is.
have any
We
provisions
have
for that?
talked about some signage for that, as well as on the basketball court to warn people that they are in a foul ball territory. So yes, there has been consideration for that once we get rules approved, we'll start moving to signage so that we can have it up towards spring. But yes, that is one of the signs that has been discussed.
And as far as, I think that this might be, if you do a special event, you're required to have your own security, correct?
Yeah, depending on the event size, I believe for certain events of small, like 5Ks and stuff like that, they're required to do their own parking. They're required, I can't even remember offhand, but yes, I mean, essentially, yes.
If someone has a ball game on the field, are they required to bring their own security at this point?
No, just like we don't for a soccer game. Now, if it was I would think a tournament or bigger game it's a kind of a different ball game than someone just reserving the field for a practice. So we may need to define those limits of what falls under our special event policy and what falls up under just a generic field rental, because I think they're different.
I agree with you. I think that's probably what I'm getting at. Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at. I'm done with my 40 questions.
Nicole, this is Randy. The field rental agreement that we have here, would that apply also to what would be considered a town partner?
These same rules? Is it?
The rental agreement?
Yes, they would have to agree to those same rules, but we would, instead of using this form that's like an individual, fill it out for every single practice or every single game, we would come up with a larger, more detailed contract or like a memorandum of understanding. But all of these rules would also apply to them.
Nicole, this is Roger. Is that on number 7 of the rules, is that it says equipment. So what I'm thinking, those little things that you put the white lines, down the baselines,
Mm-hmm.
is that who is going to furnish those?
The chalk, you mean?
Yes, the
Well, the
chalk.
town already has one, depending on the agreements with other groups. So if someone pays us to use the field, we would line the fields for them as part of that rental agreement. Depending on what our MOU was with, say, a partner organization, we could discuss, who would do that, whether that's us or someone else. But if you're like the wheeled vehicles, but that's why it says, unless permission is granted from the Parks and Recreation Department.
Also on number 8, it says metal spikes are not permitted. Is that, I would just stop that rule right there.
Okay.
Is that having kids played with both rubber and metal and plastic spikes? Metal spikes will tear you up if you're not careful. The other question is that what age group are we targeting?
I don't think at this point we're targeting anyone in particular. I think the beauty of this field is it can be used from T-ball and it can be used all the way up to adults. So
Well,
I think,
okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I think we're open to all sorts of different organizations or programs or people just wanting to come out and play ball, no matter their age.
All right. So that leads me into my next question, is that we talk about these rules, the fees, and personally, I don't think that the fees are high enough. Now, is that we need to keep in mind that 3/4 of that ball field was paid by taxpayer money. So we need to cater to the residents, and I'm gonna call it a local church or the Boy Scout group. They're down at the picnic shed having a picnic, and decide to have a pickup ball game. Or, it could be a church, it could be, just a group of guys. Well, those are the people that paid for that ball field, 3/4 of them. So instead of getting hung up on structured play, tournament play, partner with Henderson County, we need to cater to those people first. Now, going into my next question is that, along with the fees, is that how much will it cost to prepare the field for a tournament play? So is that if you have, what do you call them, these traveling baseball teams? So they sign up, they do their paperwork. How much will it cost for your staff or town staff to prepare that field, get it ready? Once they leave, they've got to bring it right back in shape. And it's going to be more than $100. Is that by the time you count the labor, the tractor, scrubbing the sand and so forth, you're going to have more than $100 in that. So is that those fees for structured play need to be higher. Now, the guy from rugby's here, I assume. Well, since he's sitting here, I'm going to pick on him. I don't even know him. But is that I don't mind rugby using the field, and my kids played at rugby. But is that if we're going to go to all this work, then rugby needs to pay us something. Is that I don't want the town to go in a hole because of rugby, West, whoever. So I'd like to put off the fee schedule and think about this till you get some more information and say, okay, Roger, is that if we do all this work to get ready for a tournament, the best I can figure is $150, whatever the amount is, then that's fine. I'm also willing to come back and revisit this after you say the $150 is that's just a best guess. I mean, is that you actually don't know, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But we may have to come back and revisit this. But is that I think people like Rugby and West need to put a little money in the kitty. But I also think that the residents should have first choice at this ball field. Yes, we got a grant. Yes, is that can supplement, some of the fees. But at the end of the day, is that it's going to run out pretty quick. Now, going back to what my age group question was, is that I don't mind a pickup game of the adults. But what concerns me is that if you have adults from somewhere else smacking that ball, is that they'll be able to knock it over the fence. But if you say 10 years old, 15 years old, whatever the magic number is that we need to consider that. Rugby's fence is only what, 4 foot high? There's a fence out there in the outfield.
That's the softball.
It's what?
Girls softball.
Okay, sorry about that. So is that we need to just keep in mind who we're responsible to and who we're catering to. Now, is that if Henderson County wants to come and use our field, that's fine. But they're going to pay for it. So is that, I don't know what the magic number is. I'd like for you to come up with the magic number.
Yeah, I'm happy to do some more research. I would really like to see though, I mean, one, this fee schedule has been here since before I ever worked here. So that's already been adopted by you all. If we need to relook at that fee schedule, I think that's certainly something we could do. And I do think you're right. I would love to look at some of the partner organizations to see what they charge for their fields. I think it's very legitimate. I would like to also see though what maybe the spring looks like as far as use, and then we'll know what kind of time we're putting in, how much supplies it's taking, being our first round. So I'd hate to give you a number and it be wrong. I would really love to maybe do some research through this spring, and maybe we can enact something new by July 1, if that would be okay.
Do we have to make a decision tonight on the rules and the fee? Is that it's not going to be open until spring, so we've got another.
We can't adopt the rules tonight. We have to have, we can't adopt the rules until the next meeting. We have to have another reading.
Yeah, we
So-
do have to have another reading for the rules. As far as the fee, as I said, that is something that has already been adopted many years ago as part of the fee schedule. So that's already in place currently. If you want to, I'm not sure how that would work. Sue or Daniel could maybe say on how, if you wanted to retract that. But as it currently stands, the fee schedule's already been approved. As I said, I would really love if we could get through the spring, maybe on this current fee schedule, and then have that opportunity to really evaluate, study how much time we're putting in, how much supplies we're using, and July 1 revisit in the new budget year of what that new fee schedule should look like.
Your fee schedule was adopted as part of your budget. So because it's an attachment to your budget, you really should be changing it with the adoption of the next budget.
She didn't hear you. Your microphone wasn't on.
So we can't change a fee schedule halfway through the year?
If it was not adopted as part of the budget, yes, you could do that. But this was adopted as part of the budget as an attachment to it. And you only adopt the budget once a year typically. I suppose, Sue, could they just amend the budget like they did, like we would need to if something else changed, revenues or expenditures?
I suppose they could. I'm not heard of it, but that doesn't mean, I mean, it belongs to council, so I guess they could.
I mean, we've never collected any fees on this fee schedule here anyway, so why couldn't we change?
Yes,
yeah,
we
we
have.
have, because it's the same fee schedule as like our soccer fields. So this fee schedule, like, yes, not specifically for baseball, but this is the same fee schedule we use for soccer when lacrosse has been out here. So that is something we do. And it would, I mean, unless you make it specific for baseball, our groups come spring, assuming COVID doesn't stop the prevention of play, hopefully we'll have these groups back out here. So it does affect them as well.
So call us Randy again. Do you have any idea how many organizations might be interested in regular usage of the field?
I can tell
Practice,
you I have been
or
reached out by
doing
6 already.
6
Inquiring
different,
about you, 6 different groups that are interested in reserving the field.
ranging from,
Most of them are travel baseball or softball.
This is Brian Kimball. I got a question. I guess what makes this a little bit confusing is I think the use of the ball field's a little bit different than somebody renting the shelter or renting the multi-purpose field, because it's more of an organized situation. And I guess another question I have, what constitutes a game? I mean, if Roger and Randy and Brian and me want to go create a team, and we create a team and we go down there and we play 9 of our other buddies, does that constitute a game, or is that a pickup game?
If you want me to line the fields and do the maintenance for it, then it's a game. If you just want to go play a pickup game and don't have foul lines or anything like that, and I don't have to move the bases and spend staff time, that's just a pickup game.
Okay. If someone comes in the park and let's say it's a traveling team and can they charge admission to the game? And how is that going to be controlled?
That is
Because
per our town policy. They cannot solicit money unless they have permission from town council. So unless you all change that, that would not change for this. If somebody wanted to come in, host a tournament, and they wanted to charge admission, they would have to go to you for permission unless you guys wanted to adjust that rule.
From my tournament experience, one field does not a tournament make. I mean, it's usually like 80 teams of all the ages, and there's like 6 or 9 or 12 fields, right? Baseball guys. Yeah. There's so many games going on at once. One field is not going to be much.
Yeah,
for
I
a
would
tournament.
not
And
predict
that would really be a long
any
day.
tournament play. And we may probably even very few game play. Most of what we're going to get requested for is probably practices.
the only thing I have seen were tournaments, some of the ones, like if Henderson County's full, they'll play some of the games at Etowah and they'll play some of the games here, and the teams have to move around to the different fields. So
But even Etowah has the 4 fields.
but it can, what I'm getting at is it can,
Yeah.
if it's overflow,
Right.
we could have 2 or 3 games here. So
Nicole, it's Roger again. So let's say that you have the paperwork for a tournament, let's say at 2:00 tomorrow. So your guys is going to go out there and line the field, put the bases down and, and then at 4:00 or 5:00 is that you have the same tournament playing 2 other people. So is that going to require, so it's all under one name? Is that going to require your guys to hustle in between games, restripe the baselines, make sure the bases are in place, drag the field, and so forth? But is that all we're getting, according to this, is just $100?
Well, it's $100 per game per field. So if they were going to play 2 back-to-back games, it would be $200. They would pay for each game on the field. It's not $100 per application. It is per game per field as listed in the fee schedule.
So how do we deal with and I'm gonna call it intermission? So you guys have got to be ready. Is that, let's say that they paid the $200 and you got two separate ball games, but they're back to back. So is that you've got to have enough staff here to get out there and drag that field. And while they're dragging it, you've got to have somebody chalking those lines, sweeping off the bases, and so forth. So
Yeah, I think that's a 1-person job. So you per game per field, you would have 1 person. They would drag the field. That's probably a somewhere 8-minute thing to do a quick drag. This isn't full. They're going to clean the lips. They're going to do all that. You're going to drag between, and then they're going to re-chalk the lines. So just depending on what kind of tournament it is, you might have a pitcher's circle for softball. You do 2 lines up the side and your batter's box, and more than likely some sort of pitching circle.
Yeah, but the 2 lines have got to go from the batter's box all the way down to the fence. It's just not an infield.
Well, the fence would be paint in the grass. So you only have to do from in chalk. Like the outfield lines are not going to be you're not going to have to redo the outfield lines. It's only the infield where it gets run through essentially and messed up.
So you're going to paint
the in between. Usually 30 minutes between games is more than enough to drag your fields, line it, and prep it for the next game.
So are you going to paint the fence for the foul ball line, or are you going to paint the grass?
The grass. There is a foul ball pole, that's already out there, and then you would paint the grass.
Okay. Is that what I'm trying to do? I'm just trying to think of all this work that one person's got to do in between games.
Yep.
And I don't know that that one person can do that. And so that brings me back to my fee schedule.
And that's
is
again,
that-
something we can certainly look at once we see how much time it's taking and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we can certainly, this fee schedule, as I said, it's been here longer than me, so I don't know even how they came up with these numbers. But we can certainly look at them and see if they're still appropriate.
Nicole, this is Brian Caskey. I just want to say I'm fairly comfortable with the fee schedule as it stands, for the simple reason that it's already in place and has been working with our soccer fields. And also, you know, if I'm going to come use the field with my daughter, it seems reasonable to pay $10, you know, for an hour of practice time. If that fee schedule were to be moved up, I would think seriously about going and finding some batting cages somewhere where she's not throwing the ball at my head or at my knees, or vice versa. But I agree with you. I think that maybe what we ought to do is go ahead with this, see how it works out. If it needs to be adjusted, we could do that certainly as part of next year's budget. So that's just my 2 cents of input. The other thing that I want to comment on, I know Roger had a comment about rule number 8 regarding metal spikes. And I think there's a little bit of confusion there because there's a typo in the sentence itself. It reads metal spikes are not permitted, although no metal cleats are encouraged for, I think.
Yes, and that should be, as I mentioned earlier, that should be non-metal spikes. So
Right,
plastic.
non or not, right? But I think that's kind of important that stays in there because there's some question, you know, with my daughter. She's played softball and boys baseball for 8 years. And when we go to any given field, there's a question of what the cleats are allowed. And metal cleats typically are not, but sometimes, you know, they do encourage cleats or sometimes they don't. So I'd kind of like to leave that in there, you know, encourage plastic cleats. That's all I got.
I'm okay with the plastic or rubber spikes. Is that I've seen what kind of damage metal spikes have done. And I haven't, but a family member has been on the receiving end of one of them. So I think it's better just scratch them off the list and be done with them. But
Yes,
I'm okay.
yeah, we will not allow metal spikes. That is for sure.
That's Brian Kimball. I have one more question. My thing is I want to make sure that we set you guys up for success. So if the time resource to have this person paint the field and all this other stuff to get it ready, have we as a town allocated to have another person here during that time, or are we going to take away from the Rangers' duties to do this?
At this point, we will be taking away from Rangers' duties to do this. Yeah, there has not been a dedicated person or position that would handle just field. And I think the thing there is to look at use. You know, when we built this, we still don't know, are we going to have games every day? Because if it's just things like practice, that maintenance can happen during regular hours. If it's only one game, we have to remember we don't have lights either. And baseball is in the spring season and it gets dark early. So having multiple games in an evening is probably not likely. You know, it'd be Saturdays or Sundays we'd have to look at. I think if we see a lot of use, that's something my department can come back and ask and say, hey, we're bringing in all these games on the weekends. We need all this stuff. I need more help. I don't think we're there yet until we fully see the use it's going to get and what kind of use. Because again, if it's practices, even if it's just one game, my daytime guy will drag the fields, line it just before they leave for the day. They'll come in and play their game. They'll lock up when our night ranger will lock up when they leave, and then he can go and fix everything the next morning. It doesn't have to be necessarily okay, the game's over, now we have to drag it. If there's nothing else planned, people can practice on there without it being dragged or lined for a day. So I would really, and before we go looking at adding more part-time guys, things like that. I think we just need to look at the use and see how that goes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that when we come in on Saturdays, the trash bins aren't overflowing because he's out there working on the baseball field. And then you get in trouble and we get letters and complaints.
Right. And I think that's certainly something we're aware of. And, you know, we usually build in a few extra part-time hours anyway in our budget that we don't normally use. So if we feel there's 1 weekend where we do have a lot of stuff, we might bring in that extra person, just like we would for a special event or something like that when we know there's a lot of people. But yeah, you know, I think once we get a season of use, we'll really get to know what kind of demand it's going to take.
Nicole, this is Brian Caskey again. I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for all the work you've done on this, but also to mention, you know, in all the years my daughter played softball and baseball, and Shay may have a perspective on this as well. I don't recall her ever playing on a field that had pristine chalk lines. So just wanted to say, you know, I mean, usually I think the field is chalked in the morning and then boom, that's it for the day. So I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of.
I would think 2 games back to back are doing that much damage.
No, yeah. I mean, unless you have real big kids, it's a rainy day. So chances are for any rec level league game between games, you're probably not even going to chalk it. You're right.
Nicole, I have a question. We're talking
Sure.
about like field prep and what kind of time the Rangers have. Is there any prep you have to do for soccer or for lacrosse?
We paint the fields every week. But again, that's not something you have to do like in between because it's grass and paint. You know, they mow, they repaint the lines before they disappear. So yes, there is, you know, both lacrosse and soccer, they have painted the lines. And of course, mowing.
Do we charge for them?
Yes, yeah, if somebody reserves it. The agreement, again, Henderson County Parks and Recreation's Rec Soccer League uses this facility for practice. And that has been a partnership since before I was here, and they use that for no charge. But we do charge lacrosse or any other soccer group that's been out here. We do charge for that.
Nicole, it's Randy again. Out of the 6 groups you said that had shown interest in maybe reserving the field, would that be for how many days a week would the average group be using the field?
We have not gotten into specifics. Knowing some of these groups, if I would let them do it every day, they probably would. But I have no intention on filling our fields with travel baseball. You know, we've been pretty good with soccer about making sure we leave open days, open times, because a lot of people just want to come out here and kick the soccer ball and do that sort of thing. And so that's something that's important to me, is that we're not catering towards our star athletes, and make sure all kids have the opportunity to come and play and get physical fitness. So I think that's something that we've balanced really well with soccer, and I don't see any reason why we can't do that with baseball. You know, I think the demand's going to be higher, and I might be saying no more often, but you know, I'm prepared to do that.
Okay, and just one other question. Have you considered a different fee schedule for organized groups versus just people that want to maybe have a birthday party or something like that?
I mean, that's certainly something I can look into. Typically with fee schedules, a lot of times you can maybe do something that's like a for-profit organization versus a nonprofit organization, or a public versus a private. You can even do resident rates versus non-resident rates. There's all sorts of different ways you can look at a fee schedule. So I'm happy to look into any of those suggestions you all want to look into.
Brian, I understand what you was talking about with your daughter. Nicole, what about, and I'm just going to throw some days out there. Let's say Friday, Saturday, and Sunday it's open to the public. Or, you know, I think it might be better to have, let's say, pre-programmed days, maybe Wednesday or whenever, to have the public, that the field is open, it's not reserved, that our baseball team here knows that it's not being used on Friday afternoons. So we can come down here and have a pickup ball game. If rugby wants to use it on Monday or Tuesday, that's fine. Or if Shay's group wants to use it, let's say on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or something like that. Have you thought about that?
I have, and there's definitely some pluses to that because it gets people in a pattern of, okay, I know I could go on Wednesday. My concern with that is, I mean, you use Wednesday for an example. So you always go to church on Wednesday night. Now you can no longer use the public field. And if you don't mix it up a little bit, you get very defined people. So, say they do soccer on Thursdays, but they still love playing baseball. That's the only night they could go. It's reserved the other nights. I think if we get into that really defined, saying it has to be open at this date and this time, it limits the size of the people that can use it, because there's some people that time just doesn't work for them. And so what we've done with soccer is I've basically, when someone calls and looks, I say, you know what, we already have, this day, and this day booked up. I can't take that as a public, just another public spot. And that's worked well for us. I think, again, this is going to be a learning curve for all of us, depending on the demand for baseball and how many groups we have that just show up and don't reserve it. Because the thing is, if you leave it open and that travel ball team knows, hey, it's always open on Wednesdays, I'm going to get there an hour early, stake out the field, and now I can practice, and now I don't even have to pay the fee. You get some of that too. So it's, I would like to do it kind of like we do soccer, where, I'll look at the schedule and say, all right, this week's really getting too full. We did not leave enough time. We're not leaving enough time for the public to come use it. I'm sorry, I can't take any more reservations.
Well, is that back to my opening statement? Let's don't forget where the money come from to build the field. So we need to cater to the citizens of Mills River first. So we need to give them the more time than, since a guy's sitting there, than rugby or these structured tournaments. The reason I made that comment is that what I'm thinking is that if the church group, whoever they might be, rent the picnic shelter on a Saturday, is that they say, oh, the ball field's open on Saturday. We can just have a pickup game after we've eat lunch. Instead of saying, okay, let me go check the calendar. Is that we need some kind of structured schedule to where, I'm gonna call them Shay's group. Shay's group has it on Monday nights. Rugby has it on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, whatever. But then is that the rest of the week is open for our little ball team. Or Brian and his daughter come over here just hitting balls.
Shay, Nicole, it's Randy again. How do you not have one group or organization whenever you open the reservation calendar? How do you have one group not go in and say, okay, I want every Thursday or I want 3 days a week. Just put me down for any of those days that you have available. How do you keep the one group from dictating or maybe hogging all the time, all the play time that you have open?
And we don't have a specific policy on that, unlimited, and it's certainly something we can add or look into. Again, it's not been a problem at this point. It's been something we've been able to manage as a staff internally. I've had soccer groups or lacrosse groups that say, I want to be out here 3 days a week. And I say, no, I'm sorry, we just can't do that. I can give you, Tuesdays and Thursdays from this time to this time. And then, just as a staff internally, we are been able to manage that. Again, with baseball, we don't know what that's going to look like. If it becomes a problem, I think we can certainly put a rule in place. But at this point, it's not been an issue, I guess, as far as our other fields.
I think my concern is whenever these organizations see what kind of nice baseball field we've got out here, that it's going to become very popular, and you're going to have a lot. You've got 6 inquiries now. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't go to 10 different groups that might be inquiring about time on the field. So that was just a thought. I don't want to see one organization, making this their main practice area and get it 3-4 nights a week. That's just a thought. I think you're going to be overwhelmed with how much. There's a lot more kids that play baseball, of course, than there are lacrosse. So I think you're going to kind of get overwhelmed with the number of requests that you have. So,
Is there a reasonable number that you think for one a week?
Well,
Microphone.
I haven't given it enough thought. I just feel like I know the travel teams, they love to practice every day, especially whenever they're playing ball. And there's quite a few travel teams in this area. And then you're going to have the Little League. You go over to Etowah, Shay knows the place is covered up with games and practice in the spring and summertime every night. So, and then you throw our middle school in there. We're going to have the demand for that field is going to be tremendous. I want to see everyone treated equal, and I want to especially see the town citizens have more than be treated fairly. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see anybody hogging all the time at the field.
Well, remember, you're going to have town residents or their children on travel teams, on rugby teams. Now let's talk about rugby, for example. They're going to practice after school and be done by 5. Your travel teams, your little leagues, they don't start practicing till usually 5:30 at the earliest because you're waiting on their mom and dad to get off work to drive them there. So rugby could practice, theoretically every day and be on and off the field before anybody else even starts to reserve it.
And to Nicole's point earlier, the days don't start getting longer until well into the summer. So by the time rugby's out of school, we won't have much past 5 or 6 in the evening for a long time.
But the earliest our little leagues or anything's ever practiced has been 5:30 because that's as quick as anyone really can get there.
So if Nicole, is that if rugby comes over here at 3:30, give or take, 3:15, let's say on a Monday, and they practice till 5. So are we going to have that field ready for rugby to come and practice? Part B of that question is that if we've got the baseball people coming in at 5:30, so we're going to have to go out there and redo that field. And we've only got 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
From my experience for practice times, fields don't get chalked. I mean, chalk is not important for practice so much.
Right.
But you still got to drag the field.
Not even that. No, Jackson
No,
Park
not
doesn't. I
necessarily.
think they drag like once a week if they have a tournament or something. Other than that,
Yeah, I mean, ideally it would get done the next day, so you don't start to get low spots and wear. But if it's just a practice, you would take care, like my guys would drag it, prep it before anything starts, and we wouldn't do anything with it again until the next day.
But if you have this tournament coming in and they're paying a premium price, then they want that field smooth and ready to go.
Right, and we would schedule that accordingly to make sure we had enough time to do all those things.
So we have rugby with us tonight. So Kyle is the coach, Kyle Parker. And this is the athletic director from rugby. So they can answer questions or concerns or tell us I know that they are probably going to lose one of the fields that the county has for middle schools because Hendersonville High School is going to bump them to Berkeley. You're losing? Probably they're going to lose a field with the 4 middle schools.
I know after practice, that's a legitimate concern. Where we are now, where we were at Berkeley, we rake everything, we get everything ready like it was when we get there. Because we want to be good stewards of, if you guys are generous enough to let us use it, we're going to leave it like it was when we get there. Over there, we line the field. All they really do is mow the grass, and we take care of everything else, in a sense. So,
Well, is that, well, I got you up there,
okay.
is that, so your, I'm gonna call them kids.
Okay.
Is that they're a maximum age of 15, give or take?
14's the oldest that we would have.
All right, so why can't you practice at your field?
We don't have a field.
It's not a dimensional, it can't be used.
All right, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Is that years ago you had practice at that field?
We just started baseball 2 years ago. This will be our third year at Rugby having baseball in the county. And we've been able to use Berkeley Park. The city has allowed us to use Berkeley Park.
Well, for some reason, my daughter and son played ball there.
They might have played your
That's a
daughter might have
softball
played
field.
softball.
No, they played baseball. So that's why I was asking about the fence. So is that, why couldn't you guys put up a bigger fence? I mean, is that, it's not tournament play. Is that, why can't you use that as a practice field?
Because we only have one field there, and it's set up for softball, and softball uses that while we're doing baseball.
They play at
Are-
practice at the same time. It's the same season.
All right, are you guys willing to pay to use our field?
Can I speak on that real
Yeah.
quick? So first of all, our student athletes don't pay to play. They're not like a travel
I
program
understand that.
that typically pays lots of money. And that's how these travel teams afford to come into these
Right.
towns and rent out these facilities and pay a large price. We as a program, as an athletic director, are lucky enough to make off a gate on a good year enough to break even. By the time I pay buy baseballs, buy helmets, recondition uniforms, and pay my officials, I don't make a dime. So to pay a place where our kids grow up, I mean, this is my first year at Rugby. I've been in Henderson County for 16 years, been at Flat Rock, then I was over at Apple Valley for the last 5 years. To come into such an amazing school that has such caring coaches, to have the opportunity for these kids to play in their community, to not have to drive all the way out to Berkeley or to Jackson Park or to Blue Ridge Community College, but for these kids that their parents do pay the taxes to pay to build this field, to be able to play on this field, would mean the world to these kids. And if it was a money thing and we really made enough money to pull this off, I'd be happy to pay. But as an athletic director right now, we can't afford to pay to use the facility. What we can do is we can make sure that we don't mess up the field, that we take care of the field, that we're good stewards of the field, that we try to add in things we've talked about. You know, your facility would really benefit from a batting cage. That's something that we could bring in and we could help with. That's going to make, right now, as far as the baseball field, do you guys have a portable mound? Because to be able to play baseball on that field, there would have to be a mound right now. So to play a game, we couldn't even play a game on that field as it stands right now, period. No one could to play as far as a travel program. So those are some things that we're coming in and wanting to be good stewards, but we're also wanting to take advantage of our community that rugby takes part in. And like I said, I know it's a money thing, but that's just not a place that we are, especially during a COVID time. So I appreciate you listening to me.
If you all go to practice, if you have to go to Berkeley or Jackson Park, do you have to bus the team over? Okay.
But like the good thing about here too, with most of the parents living in this community, they can come pick their kids up
And
from the
not
park and then
Drive all the way
use
across town.
stuff here too. And kind of to hit on what Mr. McKenzie was saying, as far as like batting cage and stuff like that, we already have batting cage net and everything that, I mean, we're willing, if this is something that we can do, to quote unquote donate, to the community to have a batting cage here that anybody can come use almost any time. And if you guys that have played baseball or softball or have kids, you know how important just having that net is for your sanity. If you are pitching to your daughter that, hey, I only have to go right here to get it now, instead of having to go out into the field to get it, which I think will take a lot of use off of the field itself also, which will preserve the grass and some of the wear and tear on the field maintenance. We talked about, possibly being able to donate also a pitching mound. So, I mean, there's little things that we can do to actually not just be a partner in theory, but actually be a true partner with the town itself. So, I mean, that's things that we're hoping we can, in a sense, come to an agreement. So,
You had mentioned that you use part of the gate money, I think, to pay for the equipment that you talked about, the uniforms and stuff like that. But if you practice or played here, you wouldn't be able to charge gate. So is that going to affect your program because you're not going to be able to charge admission?
So this year, and this is like, we're just going 1 year at a time. I'm sorry. So this year, we are not charging gates typically because of our COVID numbers. So right now, like our parents, they paid a small fee at the beginning of the year just to help us pay for officials. That money gets them into home games only. There's no traveling. So when we played out here, it would be only our parents right now that would show up. It would be low numbers, low impact. If it meant not charging here, that is something that we can definitely discuss and look at, because like I said, at the end of the day, it's really about the kids. If I don't make any money at the end of the season, that's fine. If I can provide good quality equipment for the kids and a good place to play and a place that's convenient for their families, then I'll find the money other places. I don't have to charge the parents.
So will our field be used just for practice or regular ball games? No, is that rugby playing Flat Rock?
okay. Our plan right now, if like our schedule, I guess I should say, like, as of right now, we can't start practice until April the 12th. And our season has to end about the middle of May for testing and everything. So we're only talking about 5 or 6 weeks at the most. And usually how my practice schedule works is that first week when I'm trying to get my team and everything, I'll practice Monday through Friday until 5 o'clock. And then once we start playing games, most of our games in the past, and I'm assuming they're going to be this way this year, are on a Monday and a Thursday. So we could have possibly 2 home games in a week here. And then the next week, we might not have any games at all. And then we wouldn't even be here on Monday and Thursday. Usually like I said, once the season starts, I don't practice on Friday. If I do, I just go to the West batting cages before one of their games, and we just hit it in there until like 4 o'clock, and then we're done. So, that would open up kind of for what you were saying on Fridays, that it could be open or somebody else could possibly use it, or however you guys, feels best needed. So
we would play a total of 5 games.
Yeah,
Home games is
yeah.
all we would have.
Yeah.
Five home games for the whole season.
We are just trying to balance, the tournament games, you guys, plus our citizens.
Yeah.
Plus is that I don't want our staff to go in the hole trying to accommodate anybody.
Yeah. And that's why, I want to try to be as we'll take care of everything. As far, chalk, I'll line it. I'll do everything for the game. That's what we're used to anyway. And then depending on how, the agreement we come to or whatever is, we usually rake the high impact areas, like around the bases. And then if you guys are fine with me using the tractor, like at Berkeley, I would drag it too. But sometimes people are specific, and say, hey, we want to be the one that does it. And if that's the case, then, it could probably wait till tomorrow or the next day, because of how we're going to rake all the high impact areas, which are going to, if somebody does come on after, they're not even really going to know it's been used much.
And in regards to security, we will have our own I'm sorry. Well, in regards to security, we'll bring our own resource officer here, and we'll bring our own custodial staff over to help clean up afterwards. So as far as emptying trash, all those kind of things, if that is one of your concerns as far as cost and things, when we say we're self-sufficient, we are. I mean, that's everywhere we've played ball. That's what we've had to be. And just out of respect for the towns or the cities that have let us use the facilities, we kind of leave no trace is kind of what we do. So we would make sure that I'd have a resource over here to make sure that everyone behaved and parking was okay and there was no issues like that. And he's at our school all the time and he gets paid to do that. And then as far as custodial, I would have a custodian come over at the end of the game and look over the area. If we need to spray down the area with what we use for the schools, we could treat it for COVID before we left as well. So to make sure the bleachers, everything else was sanitized before we left.
And in my experience, like as far as travel ball stuff go, I can't really speak for softball, but I know like all my boys that do play travel ball, when middle school season starts and high school season starts, those travel ball teams aren't playing. Now, granted, that's usually 11 through 14-year-olds. So there might be, like 10 and under teams still going, but usually those travel ball teams wait until after our season's over to start back up. So they would start back up in like May usually. So
I have a question, maybe Roger, you may know, or maybe even Sue. So we did have a donation that did they put any stipulations on the donation? I mean, I know it was earmarked for baseball. Was there anything like they had an intent to use it for something they wanted it to promote X, Sue or Roger?
This is an old age thing, trying to
Well,
remember.
I said historically.
Is that Flavor First gave us a grant. I think it ended up being 110,000 and some change. Well, what that was earmarked for many years ago was to build 3 baseball fields. So we only built 1, but we took the rest of the money. And so that's what we put it towards this. But basically is that it was for, and it's not organized, but that's the reason I asked the guy about rugby playing regular ball games, is that's what that was for. Was for.
I have a slightly different memory.
Okay, speak.
First of all, the money was donated to Mills River Recreation Foundation rather than directly to the town. And the intent was that the owner of Flavor First's grandchildren would be able to play baseball with their teams.
Okay, I was picking on rugby again, Sue. But
well, I know, just if you don't mind me interrupting real quick, I know last year we have a pretty good relationship with Flavor First. Brian Rose, because we were getting, I don't want to say tired, but because it was just more or less a waste of time for us to have to drive to Jackson Park to practice, because it was 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back, and it was just taking up all our time and it wasn't worth it. I did go and I talked to Brian Rose, and he has that kind of field there at Flavor First, and we were able to use that some for practice too. So, I would be willing to bet. I can't speak because I haven't talked to him about it, but if y'all had a big event that had to be used, the field had to be used, it was a day that we were going to practice or something, we could always, make adjustments to go somewhere else, or just hitting the cages at West at 5 o'clock one day or whatever. I mean, because we don't want it to feel like, we want to be able to, I'm trying to say this not the right way, but we want to be able to call it like our field, like, so we feel like we actually have a home field, but we don't want it to be just our field. Like, yeah, exactly.
So bringing other other teams from across the county, that could add to some tax base if game's over and they run over to Bold Rock for dinner, or Mills River or brewery, or to the restaurant. I mean, you're bringing in different people from across the county that could add to the Mills River sales tax base.
It's a good point. The other thing, and Roger brought this up a minute ago, we're talking about rugby as a partner, but I just want to point out, my daughter's at West. She went to rugby. Shay's son going to rugby now. I mean, these
No,
are
he's-
our kids.
He's at West now, wasn't
These
he?
are our kids. So it's a partnership, but Mills River kids go to rugby. So, and a lot of Mills River kids go to rugby. So this is a service that'll be provided to the community.
And, you know, it kind of means a lot to me too, personally. I know you guys might have heard Mr. Kimball and I talk in the beginning. I mean, I grew up in this community. I went to Mills River Elementary back when it was the old Mills River Elementary, you know, and then I went to rugby. I went to West. Now I'm back here. I used to get my hair cut by your uncle all, you know, every Saturday we'd go there and we're getting a haircut there. So, I mean, like, to me, this is part of, you know, I feel like I'm part of the community too. So I want to be able to be a good steward of it, I guess, in a sense. And just, I think that it would mean a lot to the kids. It would give them a sense of pride too. So
I was the first year at rugby whenever it opened up. And the biggest thing that the parents whined about was not having some type of field to play on. So
Yeah.
we're
So-
still continuing in on that.
So rugby was one of, I mean, Henderson County was one of 2 counties in the state that didn't have middle school baseball until,
Yeah.
so in the entire state, 2 counties, and Henderson County was one. So they had softball, but there was no boys baseball.
And I think,
there's-
I'm sorry.
No, go
sorry.
ahead.
I think maybe what, like, they had a team that was associated with rugby, but it was put on by like another program. And so that's probably like, it was a rec, and that was probably, but this, like, 2 years ago, they,
pay for it.
yeah.
It was
So that's what, they had to find other places to practice and stuff like that. And this is what, I mean, so when they started the baseball program, I think it's just been good for the whole community. And like, cause I grew up and I played baseball at West, and with those metal spikes things, I got a wound on my knee from it, but you know, that's, so it was one of those things that having this now, I think, is helping build that program back up to the level where it used to be when we were in school. And my hope is, you know, we're going to have a team in this area playing for a state championship in a year or two. And a lot of that is going to be based on the development of what they get, you know, in the middle school and on up, which to have this park as a part of that would be big, I think, for everything.
I think for me, I think the discussion has lent itself to the fact that having organized play doesn't it doesn't fit into the rules that we've got. It's a different category, or needs to be a different category. What the relationship that we have with rugby and what they're willing to offer doesn't fit within what got the rules for. So I
Right.
think
So that
it's
would be the separate MOU.
correct. I think that's the
Nicole-
thing, is that we're
Right.
looking at 2 different
Right.
things, and we can't fit them into this category. So that's,
But Nicole
I
could
think
put
that's the-
together,
Right.
they could research like what they use as an MOU with the
Correct.
city and bring that back to us. We just need to,
I agree.
we can adopt these rules now. We come back, and if there's no changes to what we've read, we come back in December and adopt them. But we can continue getting an MOU. Y'all can research what could work, and then
Yes,
resume
definitely. I
rugby discussion.
already have a few examples that I've gotten from Henderson County with the, that they have agreement with the school system. So that's not a problem at all to look at, see what that looks like, as long as, you know, we have your permission to go ahead and at least explore that partnership and finalize a contract. As far as these rules, I think the only change I heard was to add no pepper games. And Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, is that a minor enough change that we can come back with a second reading in December? With those,
Yes, it absolutely is. The first reading is for them to make any amendments they want to make. And so we can bring it back in December with an ordinance attached to these rules, so that we could have the rules in place after that evening, if council so agrees.
I have one question. If we make a requirement that security has to be provided for organized play by the person who's organizing it, is that provided for already in the rules, or is that something that needs to be addressed?
Are you talking about like rugby or?
I'm not talking about rugby.
Like
I'm
other
saying if
tournaments?
someone comes here and plays a game, a competitive game, because parents are always rational people and they never get into arguments.
It's the coaches that really tend to
So
get
my
in
thing is,
on the same team
yes,
sometimes.
what I'm getting at is I'm more proactive. I don't want the problem to get generated and then we have to come up with a solution. If it's going to be a problem 25% of the time, I'd rather the solution already be in place.
We should have asked Captain Starling to stay.
So I think that's the question is that provided for in our rules already, or is that something that we need to address as a part of these rules? For me,
I don't believe it is addressed. If that's a requirement you want to make for field use, that is something that have to be added. And we would have to, I guess, talk to the sheriff's department to see what that would look like. Because obviously we don't have our own police department or the ability to say, all right, we're going to charge you this amount because you have to have an officer there. My question would be, are you going to do it, say, you have a group of 5-year-olds playing t-ball and it's just them and their parents. Are you going to require them to pay security for that? Where are you going to draw the line on what?
that's a good question.
What you need.
And that's probably why, that's why you're
a
here.
really competitive group of 16-year-olds is going to be very different than, 4-year-olds playing t-ball.
Although I will say that I can remember several years ago, the sheriff's department actually had to go to North Henderson's youth football team's practices because the parents were getting in fights at the practices, and that's youth football. So I don't think age matters too much. If junior's not playing or junior gets hit, then yes, the parents always take an exception to it.
Yeah,
But you're the expert in this.
I could definitely tell you some stories about coaches fighting behind the snack stand. I say we just chalk out an area and call it Fight Club. Go for it.
Okay, so do we have a consensus to, she's going to add the no pepper, whatever that is, to the rules. We'll adopt it next month. And then the staff can pursue an MOU, research an MOU to come to an agreement with rugby. Do you need a motion or a consensus, Sue?
Are we not addressing security? I just wanted
She's gonna have to research that.
Okay.
Do you want to put that in the rule, for her to add that to the rules?
I would prefer there be something in there, but then if we can't, then that's my concern. If nobody else is on the same page, then
And I'm wondering if the field use rules is a little different than your rental agreement. Because, if people want to come do a pickup game, we have no way to enforce that they have security out there. So I would want to make clear that that's we update that in our field use rules and regulations and not our specific baseball rules, because the ones recommended by the Parks Committee are specifically field use baseball rules of what you have to do if you're using the field. Whereas if you're renting the field, that's a different guide. They're virtually the same, but that would be something I would specifically want in the field use regulation rules and not necessarily in our town ordinance, if that makes sense. Because we just don't want, again, a church league, they rent the
Those can
softball.
get ugly too.
Do they need security? So that's just what we need to walk through. But anybody that decides to play a pickup game, that's what these rules. I don't know if you can see. Can you guys see me? I can't see. Anyway,
Yes.
So, but those rules, I don't think the security needs to address. I think in our field use rules and regulations that they sign on the dotted line, that they agree to our terms and are going to pay our fees. That's probably where that needs to be added.
okay.
Jay, what's your experience with security at your son's games?
So rec plays at Jackson Park. So you have deputies that are patrolling through anyway, just because they are patrolling the park.
That's my experience too.
yeah.
Just you occasionally see a cop walking up and down, and then
Yeah.
they leave. And
I mean, sometimes they're there because they know a kid playing, or they're just riding through to be
I think if it's
entertained.
Henderson County, they have deputies who are stationed at the parks.
Yeah.
They actually have deputies at Jackson Park.
But sometimes
So
there's
it's
extra-
covered. So
Sometimes
that's
there's
what I'm-
extras. Just
Right.
put
So
there.
that's what I'm saying. It's covered. Whereas here, we're relying on the fact that we have one officer who has to patrol all the
22
town
square
limits.
miles, yeah.
So he can't be in two places at once.
Right.
That's my point.
But we know
And
they're
then I
going to
guess
bring
my other question is too, do you want this specific to baseball, or is this going to fall under our current soccer? Because we've not ever required it for soccer. Is that something we want to look into, that this is just baseball specific, or is this for all athletic events happening at the park?
You want me to be the person who picks on baseball, don't you?
I'm just looking for some guidance.
For me, I think it's competitive. I mean, I think baseball tends to get pretty competitive, and softball. Yeah, have we had any issues at soccer?
No, we have not.
Okay.
The only thing about, I agree with Brian, is that let's deal with baseball at the moment. Is that the kids I'm not worried about, but is that it's the parents, because the ump makes a bad call. Here comes the parent out of the stands. I've done that a couple of times. Come out of the stands, and then he's hollering at the umpire. So is that, let's just deal with the baseball. And then if you see a problem with some of the other activities, then, soccer and so forth, then I think we can address the whole town ordinance then.
Nicole, what did Fletcher do? I know they had their own police department, but they have a pretty busy baseball.
Yeah, they did not have specific security. They had one designated field supervisor, which was a staff position. We had a college age kid who was in charge of monitoring fields. I can't remember any specific instances where police had to be called. And then just like Jackson Park, you had the people occasionally go through, but they did not have someone specifically stationed at the park. We had a designated, again, in-staff person who is considered a field supervisor.
I might eat these words later. I just think it's overkill. Requirement for people to provide their own security. I kind of think it's over the top.
I think it's presence. You have a part-time park ranger. So do we want town staff down there amongst all their other things when they got to go in between games? Now they got to be down there handling security on top of that. I just want to make sure that everything's handled and thought of before we get in a situation where we're in the newspaper again because we weren't smart enough to think of that. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay, so back to Sue, did you need a motion for the staff to pursue an MOU, or is a consensus good?
I think we're okay on the rules, but the MOU, I think it's probably better to have a motion.
Okay, I'll do it. I make a motion that we instruct town staff to pursue an MOU with Rugby Middle School for use of the baseball field.
And bring it back to us to where we can see it.
Right, to discuss at our, possibly our next meeting.
I'll second her motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you guys for
Thank you for your
considering.
time.
Yeah, appreciate it.
You want to run, we've got to take a break before closed session to get, if we can run through council comments. We'll go quick. Okay. Staff updates. Sue?
I still have an opening on the Board of Adjustment. They met Tuesday night and one of their alternates wasn't available and one of their board members wasn't available. So they had a variance where they had to have 4 votes and they had 4 people. Fortunately, the applicant was okay with that, but it's kind of awkward. We really need another body. If you guys would speak to your neighbors, etc.
So have you asked the applicants that are on file for the planning board if they would be interested in the Board of Adjustments?
I have already done that. They are not.
Okay.
That was enough.
Good idea, though.
Okay, and we're advertising that on the town's webpage, right? Our opening.
We are
on
putting,
Facebook occasionally.
it's on the town's webpage and it goes out in the monthly update each month.
Okay.
Between us all, if we reach out,
Surely
people we
there's
know,
somebody, yeah.
surely there's somebody.
Okay, Arlene, any report from the tax collector?
Just to go over what was on your consent agenda real fast. As of October 31st, we've collected $1,048,535.37. That's 40.73% of our levy. And we've had some folks who have been paying with coupons, finish up their coupons, paid their 4th payment. They have a 0 balance. I'm really happy that people are taking advantage of that. Whether they would have paid it all at once and had some kind of hardship or not paid it at all, if we didn't have those coupons. I have no way of knowing that, but it's nice to see that people are taking advantage.
We
of
gave
it.
them options. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I've got unless you've got questions.
Thank you, Arlie. Nicole, anything else from you? Oh, she's gone.
It's gone.
Okay, she's talked out. All right, Daniel, anything from town manager?
Yes, the looking at visioning coming up in January, we're tentatively looking at January 28th and 29th, which is the last Thursday and Friday of the month. You don't need a decision on this tonight, but I want you to start thinking about when and work for you. Randy, I know it's not a Monday, which is not ideal for you. One second, let me put.
It's always a long Thursday, and then sometimes we leave a little early on Friday, but no promises.
Yeah, that's the idea, is to meet on Thursday, go over the typical annual updates from various staff members and agencies, and then spend the afternoon of the 28th working on the comprehensive plan, spend a few hours on that, and then come back Friday morning to wrap up whatever else we have on the agenda, which I don't know because we don't have an agenda yet, but the comp plan's the big one. So we will need to set that date before those meetings. So keep that in the back of your mind. We sent an email out probably a few weeks ago now about a municipal elements of municipal government course at the School of Government. If you have any interest in signing up for that, just let us know so we can do that. It's on the 15th and 16th, I believe, of December. The comprehensive plan, a lot of work is taking place right now on that. We gave the initial draft of the policies and objectives and strategies to the steering committee last week. And that's under their review at the moment. We've asked for comments from them by next Friday. And what they have is the very first rough draft of the document. We will review their comments by the end of next week, and then their next meeting in December, which I believe is the 2nd. We will discuss any other changes, recommendations, talk about anything that's still lingering in their mind, and then move on so that we can get another final round of reviews in by the end of the year, and then start presenting back to the planning board and town council in January. So that's going well. And then the other thing I just wanted to follow up on a previous meeting and Mrs. Wilson's comments from earlier. The planning board is meeting twice in the month of December. Their regular meeting on December 1st. The agenda for that will include a subdivision for Circle K gas station. They're going in there next to Bojangles, and all commercial subdivisions require review by the planning board. And then we will also give them an update on the comprehensive plan. This is a two-step process. We'll talk about more about it at their second meeting. And then the big item on the agenda for the first is the 160D changes that I've been talking about for the last few months. We will have our first round of those. Most of them, again, are administrative in nature. Some of them are a little bit more comprehensive. For example, the conditional use permit process is no longer a thing anymore. You can't call it a conditional use permit. They either all revert to special use permits or conditional rezonings, whether allowed by right or with standards. And that's going to be a little bit of a detailed discussion because we have a lot of uses that are currently allowed conditionally. So we'll need to make a determination as to what will be considered a special use permit. And then at some point, a discussion about who is responsible for reviewing of those permits. Right now, special use permits are reviewed by town council. If we convert everything that we have under conditional use, we haven't had a lot of those requests lately, obviously. But that means that the council will be responsible for more types of permits to review. At that meeting on the 1st, we're also going to present examples of noise ordinances from communities in the area. Not so much to look at a specific text amendment, but for them to review the mechanisms by which those ordinances are implemented and enforced. So do you use a decibel reading after a certain time? Do you say no disturbance after a certain time? Does it only apply to certain zoning districts? We will present that information to the board on the 1st and hopefully get some clear direction as to a preference for the format. And then we'll come back to them on the 15th with actual text to review. I suspect it might take more than one meeting. But if it doesn't, then you all as a council will begin to see it at your meeting in January. And then the last thing we're going to talk about on the 1st is the meeting schedule, because there's a lot of stuff coming up with the comp plan. On the 15th, we will continue the comp plan discussion. We will continue the 160D discussion if we have to, depending upon how much progress we make at the meeting on the 1st. And then the noise ordinance will be presented in its entirety in text form so that it can be reviewed. Then we'll also begin discussing the design standards, the architectural standards that we talked about a few weeks ago, get into the erosion control discussion, and then food trucks as well. The planning board used to meet twice a month, and we're going to make the request that they go back to that schedule from December until the end of the fiscal year, so that we can stay on top of these ordinance amendments as well as the comprehensive plan. Because while all these things that we know are coming, there are other things that we can't predict that may or may not come to the town. So that's where things are with all of those.
Now, question, planning board still meets in person, right? What is
Yes.
what is tomorrow's change on indoor gatherings?
Limiting it to 10 people.
So what is
It
that?
was-
Isn't planning board 9?
The planning board is 9 people, yes, in its current state.
So the others, staff will zoom in if you have to.
Yes, if people want to come in to the meeting, it will probably be, most of the planning boards, not everyone's showing up. So while there's 9 people, there's usually a couple of them that don't come. So that would free up some space in the room. And yes, if we need to, we can have staff elsewhere in the room. And that's all that I have. One update from the state. I got an email from the Department of Transportation about the bike grant that we applied for this year. They were hoping to have a decision in December. That's not going to happen. It'll be January at the earliest, which was the same pattern we saw last year. So we'll just wait and see what happens with that. That's all I've got. Oh yes, we ordered more red masks today. It should be in by about Thanksgiving. Roger's taken upon himself to give them out to everybody in town. So we're out, and they're a very popular item. Hey, I appreciate it.
Nicole is back. Nicole, did you have
Oh,
anything?
she's there. Okay.
We thought you left.
Sorry, I just wanted to catch the rugby guys before they walked out the door. Just a couple of updates on our COVID purchases. Our touchless flush toilet valves and our sinks should be coming in tomorrow, so they'll get installed tomorrow. We've ordered the soap and paper towel dispensers that are all touchless, and they should arrive next week. So we'll be excited about that. Tomorrow is the Red Cross blood drive in Town Hall. So 11:30 to 3:30, if you want to come donate blood. They have a massive shortage right now. Normally, one of their biggest ways to get blood is to go to college campuses because they give a free t-shirt and college students will do anything. So since they're not able to do that, they have a massive blood shortage. So anybody you know that's interested can come donate blood at Town Hall tomorrow. And you do get a free COVID antibody test with that. So if anybody is curious if they've been exposed, you can find out by donating blood. Next week, they'll be doing the final, bringing in ball field dirt, laser grade, and then adding the final drainage along the outfield fence. So hopefully the weather stays dry and we can finish knocking that thing out and be good to go. And lastly, we finished our public input for the Parks and Recreation Plan. We had 514 total people respond. About 75% of those were residents or business owners in town or property owners. And then we had a total of 66 folks participate in our online virtual input. About half of that was during the live version, and then we gave them the option to participate at their own pace later, and we had about another 30 or so folks do that. So that's exciting. The results of that will be presented to my Parks Committee next week. So we're moving right along there. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Nicole. Before we take a break, council comments? No? Okay, we have to not go into closed session yet, just a timeout while Sue gets Sharon on the phone. All right, okay, so anybody needs a break, now's your time.